The first thing I remember hearing on the radio was 2 people down.
From bad guys to good kids.
Keeps them out of gangs, it keeps them away from drugs.
Police officers helping the hopeless and the hopeful. Next on City Beat.
Hello, I'm Kristen Samos. Welcome to City Beat. More than any other profession, that of a law enforcement officer includes some traumatic scenes, calls that most of us couldn't imagine being part of. While officers remain professional and composed in the field, there often comes a point when they need to stop and process the things they've seen and heard. We'll begin today with perhaps the most important element in an officer's life, the support they get at home. For Susan Butler, her husband's graduation from the police academy couldn't be more exciting. For the past 6 months, she's seen little of him and more of his laundry and meals.
The academy was 24 weeks long, and that started in January. I believe January 10th was the date, and ever since then it's just been a whirlwind of uniforms and ironing and packing lunches and washing workout clothes and making sure that just anything and everything that my husband, the recruit, could need was provided.
Lieutenant Keith Jensen, in charge of the academy, says those 24 weeks are just the beginning. While he discusses family support and the need to communicate during the academy, it's not until an officer hits the streets that he or she learns what life on the lines is really about and how that can affect life at home.
The academy is such a nice, sterile environment, and then when they come out into field training, it's a surprise for some people. And a single day they can, come across a injury accident. Maybe a child gets hit by a car, or a traumatic shooting situation, that's upsetting, and they'll take that home with them. It's kind of the nature of the job.
It's the difficult calls they see, the emotion involved, and the other more basic components like their schedules that requires more understanding and support than most professions do.
Police officers work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, not individually, but we provide that service during those days, weekends, holidays, and that officers are working during those times. And it's very tough to have a traditional family life when you work the graveyard shift and have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays off.
Aside from the unusual schedules, a spouse in particular will sometimes have trouble dealing with the fact that an officer doesn't always want to talk about what they see. Angela Sheely says the key is understanding and trying to be positive.
It's just they usually, when they come home, they want to be happy and they want to do fun things with you, and they want you to understand that they're not trying to keep secrets because you don't know what they're doing every day. They just would rather not revisit it.
Sheely has been happily married to a Sacramento police officer for 23 years. Prior to that, she worked for a law enforcement association and grew up with a father who was a cop. So she knew what law enforcement life was about even before getting married. She has this advice for other family members who are dealing with the rigors of police life.
Understand that there's going to be lots of holidays are gone, Christmases and New Year's and 4th of July's, and when my husband worked graveyard for the first 3 years of our marriage, so he was literally driving in the morning as I was driving out to go to work.
Kim, is there any case law related to having...
Clinical psychologist Jonathan Portier says for officers, home and work couldn't be more different.
I think you've got cultural issues. You've got the culture of law enforcement and the culture of family and marriage, and the difference in experience between home life and work life is pretty radical.
The Sacramento Police Department recognizes that difference and works hard to educate family members about what they're getting into when a husband, wife, son, daughter, brother, or sister is considering this career.
We require our background investigators to go out and not just interview the family members of an applicant to be a police officer or significant others, but to sit down with them one-on-one without the applicant there. We basically say, go for a walk, come back in an hour, to describe what police work's really about, because you're not just hiring the employee, you're bringing the employee and their family into an organization. And that support network is so critical that the family needs to understand what the family is getting into when they become a law enforcement family.
Jensen says sometimes the key to supporting a spouse is as easy as asking pointed questions, like, how do you feel about a call? Instead of the usual, how are you?
You need to have the support. You need to be able to communicate. Probably one of the hardest things is that there's been some times where in the assignments that I've held that I've come home and maybe something didn't go quite right at work, or and I'm a little distant, but my wife, fortunately, she has the ability to detect when I'm not too happy about something or if something's bugging me, and she'll ask me questions about it. And whereas if she wouldn't ask me questions, then I'd probably sit there and stew all night long.
We constantly try to push employees to look at the family, that the family is the most important thing. The job's not. This is a career, and you can do your 30 years, and it's a great career. It's a great career. There's no better one. But you have to keep it in balance with your support network at home.
For Susan Butler, the Academy was a chance to practice the patience and understanding that's needed to support her husband, the new officer. And he, too, recognizes the challenges his life at work might present at home. For those who have lived the law enforcement life for years, early understanding is the best foundation a family can build.
We early on said this is going to change us fundamentally as a couple, and it will change him as a person, and it can't not change you when you do that type of work.
And as she pins the badge on her husband at his graduation alongside his mother, the Butler family begins a life that's curiously like no other. One that, with the right combination of family support, love, and communication, has the opportunity to become a career that changes lives and truly makes a difference. Well, many officers will tell you they entered this line of work to help people and to keep their communities safe. But what about the times when it becomes more like a war zone? When violence is a way of life and death faces them head on? Keeping officers mentally and emotionally healthy is a primary concern for the Sacramento Police Department.
The first thing I remember hearing on the radio was 2 people down, and we knew at that point it was not good.
A man armed with an assault rifle, his wife and sister-in-law dead on the front lawn, and threats to anyone who stands in the way.
He's talking to dispatch saying, if I see a cop, I'm going to kill him.
That's what rookie officers Kristen Sunby and Jennifer Ruff were responding to when the call came in on the morning of March 12th, 2005.
I remember seeing him in the doorway holding those guns, and you had to keep your eye on him. Seeing the first officer that had previously dealt with the family earlier in the morning, trying to drag that body and lifeless away from the scene, and knowing that this wasn't going to end pleasantly, what we were ready to do, whatever we had to do.
The suspect eventually committed suicide in front of a team of police officers. Sunby and Ruff completed their work, returned to headquarters, and went on with life, although life didn't seem quite the same.
You go to a different location, you write your report, and then you go home, and it gets stored, and I don't really remember when I looked at it again from a non-tactical point of view, just to think about it. I mean, it was a while, because you just don't want to think about it.
It would have been a traumatic experience for any officer. For these two, on the job just over a year, it was like nothing they'd ever experienced.
I felt like I was in shock for a long time. Did that really happen? That just kept going over and over in my mind. Did that really happen? What was that? I think a lot of it, the human part of me didn't kick in for a long time. Tactically, did we do that okay?
Calls like this one are known to officers as critical incident. Sudden and unexpected, it overwhelms a person's normal coping mechanism. Over time, these calls could lead to loss of sleep, nightmares, post-traumatic stress disorder, and worse. That's what Sergeant Susan Feenstra has been trying to prevent since 1987, when she became the coordinator of the Peer Support Program.
Peer Support is a program in-house designed to help civilian and sworn employees with difficult times in their life. That can be difficult stuff that they see on the job, like abuse of a child, an officer-involved shooting, or it can be personal stuff like a child that comes down with cancer, a difficult teen, a divorce, things like that.
Sergeant Paul Freeman was among the first on scene at the accident, which claimed the life of Sacramento police officer Emily Morgenroth. They were both working at the time and on their way to the same call.
Cleared a call together, not more than 5 or 10 minutes before she was involved in the accident. She was, somebody who I had a great deal of respect for. Somebody who will always be very close to me.
Freeman was approached by peer support members the next day after reliving the scene hundreds of times in his mind. He did what many officers do when faced with something so horrific. He tried to block it out and felt he should be acting stronger.
I'm a police officer. I'm trained to be able to fix people's problems, and then here was something that was so completely beyond my ability that I vapor locked. And once all the help got there, I'm just wandering around like a zombie.
Freeman finally found comfort in talking with a peer support officer. That talk had such a dramatic effect on his life, his emotional recovery, and his mental state that he has since become one of 25 trained peer support officers within the Sacramento Police Department. He says most people come into this business knowing they'll deal with some emotional calls, but until they actually experience them, there's no way to prepare.
I or other people from peer support can step in and help them make that adjustment. That's a great feeling. And over time, they don't forget that. And I still have people come to me, and you can see it when you look in their eye that they're looking at you a little bit differently as a confidant to a certain extent, as kind of an emotional rock.
I think law enforcement, emergency services personnel in general, see so much more than the rest of the world sees on a daily and weekly basis, experience so much more trauma, that if you don't have a program in-house to help them through the difficult times, you end up with a much less healthy organization because people are suffering from the stuff that they've seen.
Another person trained in supporting officers is law enforcement chaplain Mindy Russell. The chaplaincy program provides support for 14 different agencies throughout the region and provides confidential intervention for officers dealing with crisis.
When those things that they are involved in affect them, that their normal coping skills can't help them get through, then that's where that intervention of someone on the outside that can be objective and can help them through it emotionally as well as cognitively. That's what we do. We help them see that.
Chaplains aren't sworn officers, but all have special training in the kinds of crises cops face. Mindy Russell says chaplains help them to process the violence and devastation that officers sometimes see on the job, and to remember why they're doing it in the first place.
One of the things that the chaplains can help them with is keep a perspective of that and to keep that altruism that I can make a difference intact.
While most officers really do want to make a difference, part of helping their communities includes helping themselves to stay healthy and happy. Sergeant Freeman says programs like these have saved lives, careers, and marriages, and have helped countless people like himself dealing with the devastation of losing a colleague go on with life and truly make a difference.
Peer support helped me realize, or helped me to remember Emily not for how she died, but for how she lived, because her life is not defined by how she died. So, and that was important for me to realize that. So now when I think back, you always have that hole, but your ability to, to cope with it is much better.
While asking for help used to be something officers just wouldn't do, these days they're encouraged to work through the painful memories of a tough call by talking with peer support and chaplains. The two programs together have helped literally hundreds of policemen and women continue to be healthy, productive officers on the streets. Well, you've probably heard that law enforcement is like one big family, but for a surprisingly large number of Sacramento police officers, their brothers and sisters at work really are their family members at home. Most 19-year-olds wouldn't want Dad anywhere near their job.
What are you doing?
But Ann Shirashi doesn't have much choice. Her dad's the captain of Homeland Security for the Sacramento Police Department, and she is a student trainee in crime analysis.
He sometimes checks up on me every so often, so it's kind of like you always got to be on your best behavior kind of feeling, but it's cool working next to him.
So what are you doing again?
Watch. Right? This is T-stops,
Right.
traffic stops. That's when an officer pulls somebody over or something.
How funny. You are
And then
funny.
Captain Rich Shirashi's office is a stone's throw from his daughter's work desk. But if he wants to check in on the rest of the family, they're not too far either. His wife Sharon is a volunteer for the department, and son Jeff is a rookie patrol cop.
Our department supports bringing on families, and I think that's a great thing. Tradition is part of the law enforcement profession, and going on 27 years, getting close to 30 years in my career, now I'm going to have a namesake for another 30 years.
For the younger Shirashis, a career in law enforcement seemed like a natural progression after growing up with a father in the police department.
I had to be at work quite a bit, and I've always worked in the community volunteer-wise, and to be close to my kids, I just kind of brought them along to community fairs and all the neat stuff and that law enforcement has, and next thing you know, the whole family's working with me.
And for the family, when Dad's a captain who's earned his way in the police department, there's no doubt there's just a little pressure to perform.
There's definitely some shoes to fill. People expect me to know a lot of things, but other than that, they're pretty accommodating in realizing that I'm brand new to this, and they're not going to put too much pressure on me.
Perhaps someday we'll see another Captain Shirashi, or maybe even a chief. As for now, there's one thing this family can say for certain.
But at home, we know who's boss. So
Now, who is it?
I think it would be me.
Excellent.
You understand you have some warrants?
For Detective Jason Kirtland, Special Investigations Officer who deals with prostitution, this career may be exciting, but it was his early days on patrol with his twin brother Josh where the real tricks were played.
A lot of times at the end of a call, people, they're so caught up in the moment, they wouldn't realize that we were twins, and then we'd tell them, hey, do we look alike? And just have fun with them that way. But
all joking aside, the two fraternal twins take on different looks these days, but are still closer than ever, something they credit their law enforcement careers for strengthening.
we never stray too far apart from each other as far as phone contact. We live around the corner from each other, and we're always there for each other, so we're definitely a strong bond.
And while some companies discourage family members from working together, it's that strong bond that makes them even stronger on the job.
My contacts, his team can rely on the detective division because I have those contacts, and my detective division can rely on the parole impact team because he has those contacts, just one phone call away from us, and I'll do anything for him and he'll do anything for me, so it definitely benefits in that regard.
So if you think two brothers working together is unusual, how about three? Add in their father and you've got the Sheely family.
I joined because I was looking for a job in 1958, and my wife read to me that there was an advertisement in the paper that they were hiring policemen. I said, I'll give it a try, and I did.
And from there, a law enforcement legacy began. Nearly 50 years later, it includes a retired deputy, a CSI supervisor, a lieutenant, and a captain.
I always had a lot of love and respect for my father, and as a child growing up, I would see him come home with his uniform on, and I was kind of in awe of that. My generation back then, we played cops and robbers, and we fashioned guns out of sticks and chased each other around, and I was always the cop. And I just decided that would be a good job, just to follow in my dad's footsteps and to become a police officer.
And younger brother Dan, now a lieutenant, did the same.
I don't remember that moment that I decided that that's the career I want to be in. I think it was kind of just a gradual exposure to it, and saw what my father had gone through, and saw how rewarding of a career it was for him personally, and how it affected him and was able to affect his family and influence his family. to make some of the right choices. It was just one of those things that it just was kind of understood, I think, as I was growing up, that that's what I wanted to do.
As for Anthony Sheely, the third brother to join the department, the story was a little different. While he knew working patrol wasn't for him, he had a deep respect for law enforcement and for his family. He found a job that's more his style and is every bit as important as wearing a badge.
So I never wanted to be an officer. It didn't appeal to me. But then at one point in time, my dad mentioned about the fact that I had a civilian position where you can work and you did the fingerprints and the process of evidence and things like that. And that seemed to be something that I was really interested in. And so when it came up, I applied for it, and I've been doing that ever since. And it's a great job.
Families like the Sheelys, the Kirtlands, and the Shirashis were raised on the principles of honor, respect, and service to others. And that's a perfect fit for a career with the Sacramento Police Department. Although they remain professional on the job, their bond goes much deeper than the normal camaraderie of peace officers.
It's kind of like that silent relationship. I mean, we all get along really well, but we all know we have something in common. We've all been through the same type of circumstances. You know, we've responded to the same types of calls. We've seen things together, and it's just kind of made us stronger.
That just gave me chills to put that badge on my boy. And all the memories of him just growing up as a little toddler and riding little bikes and police bikes and his little police uniform. It was really the proudest moment of my law enforcement career.
For law enforcement, it's easy to say that you're part of the big family, but I think the uniqueness of the Sacramento Police Department is we actually live it. We actually do it.
It is. It's law enforcement. It's a family in general, but it's even more of a family when you have your own family working here with you.
This next segment features members of the Sacramento Police Department who go above and beyond the call of duty, who do something outside of work that truly affects their community. In this case, two officers, a husband and wife, remember just how important those high school years can be by volunteering for a program that helps underprivileged teens. When they're not wearing a badge and uniform, Sergeants Renee Mitchell and Mark Greenlee are helping to uniform others. And we're not talking about police work.
Welcome to Cinderella's Closet.
Cinderella's Closet in downtown Sacramento provides prom dresses for teenagers who can't afford them otherwise. It's part of a bigger program called SAFE, or School Activities for Everyone. Volunteers help raise money to cover the cost of anything from uniforms to leadership camps. All the things that make high school fun and help keep kids out of trouble.
I grew up playing soccer and swimming and playing softball when I was young. And for me, I wasn't raised with a lot of money either. But my mom worked really hard to make extra money so I could be involved in activities because she knew how important it was. And I know a lot of times nowadays, sometimes kids have parents that might not care as much, but that might be the only thing holding them in school.
I like to donate this dress first.
At Cinderella's Closet, most of what you see is donated. And students who qualify for SAFE come here to pick out their dream prom dress and matching shoes and accessories for free. There are also formal gowns, wedding dresses, and business suits that are for sale to the public, with proceeds that help to fund activities for SAFE.
That's a looker.
Oh yeah, sure.
My role in the police department, I get to see this firsthand, to see, you know, these kids that don't get to experience the things that I got to experience because of their, you know, they don't have the money, or they can't, or they don't have role models to push them into that and say, hey, you know, this is what life's about. This is where the fun is, not, you know, standing on the street corner with nothing to do.
I think that's great. I mean,
Meet Shirley Chow, a senior at Sacramento's Florin High School and a member of the Key Club and student government. Here she is last year at their annual leadership camp, an activity she's attended for the past 3 years thanks to SAFE.
I really, really appreciate it because, I mean, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be, you know, attending all those conventions that I did, and I wouldn't have gone to camp. And they're actually sponsoring camp for me this summer as well, and I wouldn't be able to go to that if it wasn't for them.
Same holds true for Edwin Cruz, another high school senior who will be the athletic rep at this year's leadership camp.
SAFE is going to be it's going to play a major role in my going to student government camp, which is going to be, of course, beneficial to me, because we're going to go learn so much new stuff and have so much fun, and I just think it's going to be a great opportunity for me as well as my fellow classmates in student government.
Like most of the kids receiving help from SAFE, these two are bright, ambitious students who have the brains and desire, but not the pocketbook, to participate in activities that might even help them get into college. SAFE and volunteers like Sergeants Mitchell and Greenlee believe that simply providing an opportunity allows kids like these to grow up to be adults who also give back to their communities.
I think that's cool, you know, because SAFE, they're just a great program, you know. It's just good for us kids, and to see that 2 police officers are helping, I think that's a good way to set an example considering their positions. So I think it's good.
SAFE is now in 12 area high schools with hopes to expand throughout the Sacramento area. They've provided more than 500 prom dresses for young girls and have helped hundreds of other students participate in school activities and leadership programs. Board member Ann Gambino says they couldn't do it without help from volunteers.
They're the lifeblood of this organization. Both Cinderella's Closet and SAFE heavily depend on volunteers. We have 1 part-time paid employee. So everything that happens in this organization happens because of volunteers.
As for Mitchell and Greenlee, they say they volunteer here because they see what happens when kids don't have the money to play after-school sports or be involved in extracurricular activities. They know firsthand how help from just 1 person or 2 can change the path of a teenager's life.
It keeps them out of gangs, it keeps them away from drugs, it keeps them involved in their community and in an activity that makes them feel good about themselves.
This is kind of, for me, is kind of an outlet, you know, instead of sometimes seeing all the negativity that we see in our job. This is a way for me to say, you know, here's some positive results that we got, here's some kids that we helped.
If you would like to donate some old dresses that are hanging in your closet or give some of your free time, contact SAFE at safeinsacramento.org. As you can see, there's more behind the badge than we may realize. Like us, officers have family, they have feelings, and the pride in their community doesn't stop when they hang up their uniform. That's all for this edition of City Beat. I'm Kristen Samos. On behalf of the Sacramento Police Department, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.